Timmy is a chronically online kid, but he's set out to change that. He has abandoned his Roblox girlfriend, and he is going to find one in real life, and he knows just who. He's going to go up to Jane, his real-life crush, and ask her for her number. Fast forward to not that long afterward, and Timmy is in the principal's office, getting the school equivalent of Me Too'd. Timmy is upset and embarrassed and all of these feelings, but more than anything, he's confused and fed up. This is not the first time it's happened. Before Jane, there was Shirley, and there was Lindsay, and there was half of the other girls in the school that he went up to, and if he didn't get basically Me Too'd and doxed, at the very least, he got rejected very strongly. He wants to know what's going up. And since Timmy's chronically online, how does he look for the answers? He goes online again. At this moment, Timmy is faced with a choice. He can truly search for answers by searching through boring articles, by reading about actual female psychology and his own male psychology, learning about what in himself might be driving women away, learning about the cultural aspects that are around through healthy, normal means. You might look at some Jordan Peterson. There are normal, slightly less entertaining ways you could look about this. But Timmy's not going to do that. Timmy is a chronically online 12-year-old, and his attention span is 5 seconds long. So you know where he goes? Before he knows it, Timmy has spent hours and hours scrolling through redpill YouTube, redpill TikTok, all these different redpill social media pages. He's gone from Andrew to Tristan Tate. He's gone from fitness influencers to guys like Fresh and Fit to Strong Successful Male and all of these guys. And he's learned everything about the true nature of women, from how they manipulate you to what they're truly attracted to everything in between. You might think stewing in his anger like this and just bombarding himself with all the same messages that he learned at first from society and thought in his head that made him so angry, but no, Timmy feels amazing. Timmy feels empowered. Why the hell is this? Because now Timmy's failure is no longer his fault. It's the fault of women in general. It's the fault of society. Because now whenever he goes up to a woman and he tries to get her number, it's just he's always going to get rejected. It doesn't matter what community he goes to. It doesn't matter if he goes to a religious community, because it's never even occurred to him that he could go to a religious community, because, of course, Timmy's an atheist. He spends too much time gooning to pray. So now he can offload all of his anger, all of his disappointment, all of the frustration that he feels at society, at women in general, onto them. And think, it's not my fault that I failed with all of these girls. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm still a super duper amazing manly man. It's everybody else's fault. But thinking along these lines is just stewing in your own anger. While it does make Timmy feel good, while it does make him feel empowered and like he's learning things, it also stirs up his own anger and resentment. He needs a way to let it out because he's an immature, chronically online 12-year-old. How is he going to do this? And the answer to that is promiscuity. Because setting aside his lustful instincts to really leave women completely out of his life would require Timmy to display a very high level of self-control and maturity, something that almost nobody in redpill spaces is ever able to show. They show how to find success. And what's success? Success is not a long-term relationship. It's not a stable marriage. It's not a bunch of well-raised kids. Success is having many women who all want to have sex with you so that you don't have to set aside your own sexual drive, but you don't have to deal with any of the responsibility that comes along with it. So you can have your cake and eat it too. As well, promiscuity allows a way to quote-unquote get back at these women by treating them the way you want to treat them, by destroying her ego, showing your masculine worth, and using all of the other tactics that red pill influencers tell you will make women fall into your arms and line up to screw you one after the other. Timmy can get the control that he wants over women because he's resentful of them, and the sex that he wants from them because it's just a natural physical instinct that he doesn't have enough self-control, that, he brags about having discipline because he works out, but he doesn't actually have the self-control to master those instincts, but without the risks of being manipulated and being hurt, and without having to deal with his own internal fear of those things in order to do it. He doesn't have to actually compromise with somebody long-term and build a plan for a stable future relationship, and thus none of these ladies have any opportunity to trap him, to screw him over in the divorce courts, which he's hearing from all these red pill influencers happens in every single marriage. It never really ever works out. So he can get everything that he wants from women, at least in the short term, without having to confront his own fears and insecurities. But you might think, this can't last forever, because Timmy is no longer an immature 12-year-old. Timmy is an immature 27-year-old. He's been watching Red Pill for most of his life at this point. He's slept with a bunch of women. How successful he is. He has a side gig on the side of his McDonald's job. But his parents want him to look for a wife. His parents want him to settle down, maybe have a few kids or something like that, which might be taken away from him in the divorce court that every single couple goes to at some point, even though it's actually only like 50% and that's among secular marriages. But Timmy doesn't have time for statistics because math is something that the Matrix forces on you to mind control you. So he doesn't have any clue that if he goes to a religious community, he actually has pretty decent chances of finding a stable and loving wife. But he doesn't even really care, because you might think that filial piety and societal responsibility would eventually force him into actually finding a stable marriage, actually settling down. But nope, this all ties back to the biggest attracting power of red pill content, MGTOW content, because it frees the viewer from any and all responsibility to society, responsibility to their parents who want them to settle down, responsibility to a spouse and to kids who are dependent on them for years of their life. MGTOW gives the ultimate excuse for not entering into any sort of long-term compromise with other people, where you may have to occasionally set aside your own interest, your own ego, the things that you want to currently do in order to sustain a family, in order to build a future, in order to make your parents proud and so that they can die knowing that they have grandkids. By saying that it is impossible, by saying that it's not something that men can get these days, which is the easiest cop-out on earth. How do people avoid studying math when they don't want to study math? I'm bad at math. I'm just going to get a D at math. How do people avoid getting in shape? I just have bad genes. I'm just always going to be fat. It is impossible is everyone's favorite excuse. And Timmy is using it as well now because he doesn't want to have to look for a wife. He doesn't want to have to challenge the MGTOW beliefs that he's built over the course of his life. He doesn't want to have to compromise across years, across decades for the greater good, because that requires maturity. So sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who would be Timmy's mother and father, but your son doesn't have any responsibility to you, and he does not have any responsibility to society. He is living for himself. Which is another way that MGTOW enables immaturity, because there is no responsibility to live with anybody else in mind. Your parents don't matter because your dad's a simp and a cuck, and your mom is turning him into a simp and a cuck. So none of them are actually good people, so you can ignore them. You don't have to live for a woman, which, I mean, you shouldn't live with women being your whole goal in life, but, you don't have to actually dedicate yourself to a wife or to having kids or to anything like that. You're living for yourself. You're improving yourself, and you're advancing your own goals. This makes you seem cooler to all of the other MGTOW and Red Pill bros that you see online, makes you more like the guys like Andrew Tate that you admire, and most importantly, offers you freedom from having to sit down and, like an adult, sometimes compromise your own desires for the good of other people, or because not every single one of your desires is going to be achievable, something that everybody needs to come to grips with in order to become an adult, but not if you're on Red Pill and MGTOW and all of this kind of content, which sells you the dream of that you can focus only on yourself, and if you put in enough hard work and call enough people betas in order to prove yourself as an alpha, you can do anything you want without having to respond to anybody. So Timmy is thinking along these lines, and he's just going about his life, living his days, well, living is a strong word, lurking his days in his parents' basement, gooning and watching red pill content, when he encounters the first serious problem in his MGTOW journey. His dad knocks on the door. "Come in," says Timmy. "Are the tater tots and the taquitos ready?" "Well, son, I do have your microwave food here," says his father. "But there's something we need to talk about. Son, your mother and I are worried about you. You haven't left this basement for 5 days. You smell like crap. And more importantly, I don't know about all this MGTOW stuff you're into. You know, your mother and I, we'd really like you to have a kid or two, a wife, come along with them. You know, that's generally the normal way things go. Maybe a job. I mean, I know that would involve a boss and you don't really like that, but let's be honest, you're never starting a business, so like, please. Now Timmy has another choice to make. The first option that he has is to actually directly engage with what his father is saying. To take the points that his father is making seriously, and to actually sit down and think, is this the path my life should really be on? Even if he's convinced that it is, to sit down and actually consider it and talk it through with his father, and maybe come to some sort of grown-up compromise over the matter. But that would require Timmy to be an adult. So he whips out the good old red pill thesaurus. MGTOW arms young men with an entire lexicon of terms that they can use to refer to other people that basically people only use within their own circles, and a lot of people outside of them only have just now come to understand because of how often they've been used by people in MGTOW and red pill circles, and even then only really use them in a joking way. Terms such as simp, beta, cuck, a lot of insults, 304 for women, and these labels can be applied to any person, such as Timmy's dad, who professes beliefs that you don't agree with, who has a perspective that you see as weak, or as woke, or as some other word starting in W. And this frees you from the responsibility to actually engage with the points that any other human being makes, at least if they're points you don't like, because you can just slander them with all of these different terms. And a point that's made by a weak, simpy, obese, beta cuck 304 blah 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 doesn't have any merit. You don't have to listen to it. You don't have to take it seriously. This frees you from the responsibility to take anybody that you don't want to hear seriously and actually engage with them like an intellectual adult. And so we see that Red Pill and MGTOW has left Timmy absolutely free from any and all responsibility. He doesn't have to deal with the points his father makes. He doesn't have to accept any responsibility to his community, to starting a family, to the expectations that his parents have of him. He doesn't have any responsibility to actually search for a good woman, because apparently all women in all countries, in all communities, across all religions everywhere are 304 simp creating whores these days. His only responsibility is to himself and to doing what he wants to do, what he feels like doing, what makes him feel empowered. Sounds a lot like the ladies that he so resents for being so feminist, eh? This example has been a very comedic take on the issue, but in all seriousness, there are plenty of young men in real life just like Timmy, who go on this same spiral, who take their hurt and anger at society and at women, and there are issues with society and women these days, I don't deny that. But they, instead of dealing with these feelings, and instead of actually searching for the right kind of woman, actually coming to some sort of compromise with society overall, they bottle and weaponize that hurt and hang on to it as long as they can in order to build an identity around it. Because turning your failures into an identity is much easier than dealing with them as failures and forcing yourself to grow. The video I made before this one was also on the subject of MGTOW. I suggest you take a look at it because this gives a lot more of my opinion on MGTOW in general and why I think a lot of the things they say about society are accurate, some are not accurate, and why it's much better to live your life in a different way. The alternatives I provide, it's titled MGTOW is Cowardice, and especially in the comments, I think you can see a lot of the last point that I made where people will avoid engaging with your points by throwing out terms such as simp, beta, cuck. I've been called all these kinds of things. I was even called virgin, which, I mean, you're rejecting women and it's an insult to be a virgin? Like, okay, all right, pal. And it's honestly ironic how feminine it is to be crying in the comments about how, oh, this person just said an opinion on the internet that I don't agree with. He made me actually question my worldview. That means he's a simp. I don't even know who I'm simping for. I've never been in a relationship. I'm pretty damn young, and I haven't started looking for a marriage yet. But I plan to in the future, because unlike a lot of these MGTOW guys, I do acknowledge the responsibility that I have to my parents and to society and have not given up on them. And I'm actually in a religious community where there are good women. They exist. Timmy's spiral is, if anything, just something that happened mostly in his head, amplified by true cultural realities that do exist in modern Western secular culture, but are not the entire world. are not every woman, any more so than every man is a rapist and every man is a jerk and every man is out to get you, just like how women say, which is what so many MGTOW guys are like, these women think we're all bad people. They're all bad people for thinking that. That's not really a logically very strong position. So anyways, yeah, I've babbled enough. Go watch my other video, and please, for the love of God, be an adult.